Hi, it's Mrs. Cannikins, and welcome back to Teaching About AI. We welcome you to join us for this play and pause co-taught lesson. And this is going to help you and your students learn about AI. You can play the video in class. We teach the mini lesson while you help out your students. You pause for discussion or hands-on experiments, and then join us for a quick wrap-up. Or perhaps you just watch the lesson for the teaching ideas, and then you replicate it with your students in class whenever it seems like the time is right. Either way, we hope that you will join us in teaching your students about AI. Today, we dive into part 6 about AI over reliance on AI. The first thing that we want to do is just a quick review of where we've been. We've looked at other important things to learn about AI. We hope you go back and take a look at those activities as well. Many lessons to learn about bias, about how AI is unimaginative, how it likes to give us misinformation or disinformation. We need to talk about privacy and safety concerns, plagiarism and copyright issues, and then, of course, today, over-reliance on AI and why we want to avoid that. So I know as a student and as a learner, it can be tempting to just have AI do the work. You can put a prompt in, you can press a button, and boom, there's an essay or there's a lab report, or it seems like your work is done so easily. However, there is such a caution that we want to lay out. If AI is doing the work, you are missing out on the learning. And the key here is that AI can be a great support tool. It can support the learning. It can help us brainstorm and come up with lists and come up with research. However, we have to be really careful that we don't let us replace the learning. Here's a great infographic, a great decision tree, if you will, and you can go to the website AI for Education. And this is a great guide for students on whether or not you should use AI. You can see on the far right side there, if you're looking for AI to help you fully complete the assignment, the answer is always going to be no, because you're missing out on the learning. There's some other examples here. I encourage you to come back and take a look at this. Maybe this would be a really good thing to discuss with students. We're going to go on and look at why it's so important that we don't miss out on the learning. Why is AI not a great shortcut? Lots of reasons. Here are my top 3. One is that we just miss out on learning skills. I want you to think about something that maybe you've learned, maybe an instrument like piano or violin, a skill that you've learned, maybe learning to skate or learning to ski or learning to catch and throw a baseball and to be a better batter. Maybe it's learning about video games. Think about the first time that you've played a video game and how much you improve the more that you practice. Or think about something like archery or some other skill that you've learned. Now, as you learn those, we practice. And the more we practice, the better we get. We make mistakes, we learn from them. That causes us to get better. In lots of those things, we develop our own unique style and we have our own flair and we learn to do things that are really unique. And so if we use AI as a shortcut for our own learning, whether that's in writing or producing work, we are missing out on all of that practice and we will not get the skill that we need for doing things like writing, for example, or specific kinds of writing. We will miss out on growing resilience and a growth mindset. And so if we always take the easy route, we don't learn how to problem solve and get better at things. And perhaps the biggest one is that if we are over reliant on AI, we miss out on all the learning and we become vulnerable to misinformation. We don't know how to search, how to check, how to discover whether AI is telling us the truth or not. And so the less that we know, the fewer skills that we have, the more vulnerable we become to whatever AI will produce or whatever other people will produce. And that can really easily lead to our manipulation, which is something that we want to be very cautious of. We are going to look at some metaphors or some analogies, and then hopefully you'll come up with some that will help frame that in a way that makes sense to you. Over-reliance on AI is like going to the gym. And let's say that every day you go to the gym for 2 hours, but you decide, well, today I'm just going to work out for 5 minutes. If you did that day after day, when you get home, you know that you won't have the benefit of that 2-hour workout. And so eventually you would become less fit. You might gain some weight. You might not be able to grow those muscles. And so that time is not well spent. If you're sitting there listening to your iPod instead of working out for those 2 hours, you know that you wouldn't expect to grow some skills. Over reliance on AI is like eating takeout every single day. It's easy and convenient. You can do it really quickly, but it's less healthy, it's expensive, and you become reliant on it. Now, the alternative is learning to cook. That's like learning to do things without AI. In this case, if you learn to cook, you can save a lot of money. You're more nutritious. You can control the ingredients, especially if you have allergies or if you want to eat more healthy. So, there are lots of benefits to learning to cook. Even though sometimes it's nice to take takeout or go for takeout, we don't want to rely on that. And it's just like AI. We can use it sometimes, but we shouldn't use it all the time. Here's another one. Over reliance on AI to substitute for genuine effort in learning is like learning to drive by only playing racing games on video. You might develop quick reflexes and you might develop some spatial awareness in that virtual world, but you will not learn real world skills. You won't learn situational awareness of what to look for and the responsibility of driving that comes from a real car on real roads. It's just not the same. And so now we want you to pause the video and have a turn yourself. We would like you to find your own metaphor or your own analogy for finishing an example. You can use one of the ones below or come up with your own. Maybe it's learning to swim or do a sport. Maybe it's building something like a house or something else, growing your vocabulary, learning a musical instrument, or maybe think about the process of rehabilitating your body after you've had a bad accident. How would it be less useful if you only relied on the shortcuts to do those things? Take a time, come up with your own. Maybe you write that out in a Google Doc, or your teacher might want you to record that somewhere. When you come back, we're going to take a look at some other ideas. Okay, welcome back. What did you come up with? Here's some things that I came up with for some of those ideas. So, over reliance on AI to substitute for genuine learning and effort is like trying to becoming a musician by only listening to recordings or only listening to music or only listening to Spotify. You might appreciate music, you might really, love it and enjoy getting down, grooving to the music, but you won't develop the discipline of practice. You won't be able to read notes or timing. And if you think of music as a whole another language, you won't really know the language. The dexterity, the fingering, the manipulation, you won't get that just by listening. Over reliance on AI for learning to write or do other things is like that. Here's another one. Over reliance on AI to substitute for genuine effort in learning is like trying to become a chef by only reading recipes. So you might get really good at understanding ingredients and knowing what ingredients pair well together, and you might be able to memorize the instructions and this is usually the first thing and the second thing and the third thing, and this is usually how a recipe works. But you won't develop the intuition. You won't develop the problem solving skills. Yes, maybe you can make this recipe, but what happens if you're also trying to cook something else at the same time and maybe several different dishes that go with a meal? You won't be able to have the practice of putting that all together. You won't develop the creativity that comes from cooking and need a little more dash of this and a little pinch of that, and this is needs some thickening, or right, the recipe doesn't always work, and you can't figure that out unless you're there doing it in real life and adjusting as you need. One last one. Over reliance on AI might be like relying on a fitness tracker or a GPS to navigate every step of a hike. Or imagine getting back and forth to school, but you only rely on your GPS. You might get there, you might get to where you're going, but you miss the views. You miss seeing how nature's changing or how your neighborhood is changing. And think about not being able to get there independently. What happens if your technology goes down? What happens if you just don't have your technology? It's so important that we can also make our way in the world naturally without over relying. So, lots of examples there. As we wrap up, topic of over reliance on AI, when is it okay to use AI as a tool in school? Some quick things. Make sure that you have permission from your teacher. If you're not sure, ask. You should be properly citing AI. you should always double check for bias, for hallucinations, for misinformation, some of the things that we've learned about in these other videos. And always keep in mind, if your assessment is not assessing that particular skill, then maybe it's okay to use AI for part of the learning. So if it isn't about writing, maybe it's okay to use AI. If it's the assessment isn't about your ideas, maybe it's okay to generate some ideas. But again, if in doubt, always ask your teacher. There are a whole bunch of other videos that you can catch up on in this About AI series. If you're looking for reminders about AI or how to teach about AI, make sure you check out some of these other important topics.